Hi everyone, I'm Julie from K&J Adventures, and today we're going to talk about 5 important tips for purchasing a slide-in truck camper. I went through this process for myself, and I think I have some information that you're going to want to hear. Number 1, let's start with the pickup truck that you already own or one that you might be thinking about purchasing. There's a lot of considerations when adding a slide-in truck camper to a pickup truck, and these are some numbers that you're going to want to know. The payload rating, the options on your pickup truck, the gross axle weight ratings of both the front and the rear, the gross vehicle weight ratings, the tire specs, and even the tow rating if you think that maybe you're going to want to haul around some toys. I've been a pickup truck girl all my life, and if you're a truck driver, you're pretty familiar with all the ways we like to test our pickup trucks. For example, we might like to drive through mud ponds, we might like to back up in our driveway in four-wheel drive over the large mound of snow at the end, put in, say, 2 yards of mulch in our half-ton and drive like a rocket ship ready to take off down the road, or maybe even go to the Home Depot, order a whole lot of ceramic tile and listen to the guy driving the forklift who's putting the pallet in your truck say, "You might be a little bit overloaded when I drop this." Yeah, like we haven't really heard that before. So we can just agree that testing our pickup trucks is part of the fun of driving one. However, beyond all the short trips we take and adventures that we have, when I was putting in a slide-in truck camper, my thoughts were that I wanted to stop the testing and I wanted to be as safe as I could on the road for myself and for others. So I had built a truck topper camper on my 2014 Chevy Silverado half-ton. And I had a lot of fun traveling across the country in all kinds of camping adventures. And what I decided was, when it was time to upgrade that truck topper, was that I definitely wanted something similar to it, which really was a slide-in truck camper. All I really knew about the half-ton that I was driving was that my payload was 1,750 pounds. So what I learned was you have to know or have a reasonable guess about your pickup truck regarding GVWR, GAWR, payload, tow rating numbers of your truck, tire specs and size, any factory or personal added things to your pickup, for example, like heavy-duty shocks. And where are you going to find some of this information? Well, 3 places. 2 of them are going to be inside the driver's door or on the pillar between the front and rear seating if you have one of those quad cabs. And one other sticker you're going to find usually inside the glove box. And this is going to give you some of your starting information. Number 2. Now let's think about the truck camper that you want to own, the options you'd like, and wet weight versus dry weight. We'll use my example. I set out looking for a camper that was under my half-ton payload and left some extra pounds for all my stuff and anyone that I might want to bring with me. Having camped in tents and travel trailers over the years, I really had a pretty good idea of what I wanted for options in a truck camper. My preferences were a hard side truck camper. And I learned pretty quickly that what I wanted and what was reasonable on a half-ton probably wasn't going to happen. So I was looking at the pop-up truck campers because they're really pretty nice and they have a lot of advantages besides just lower weight, such as better fuel economy or easier to do off-road exploration and things like that. So the average soft side camper is going to weigh in somewhere between, let's say, like 1,000 and 1,500 pounds, just as a rough ballpark. Dry on average. So let's do some half-ton math. And I really don't like math. Okay, so we know that my Chevy half-ton payload is 1,750 pounds. So let's say, for example, we have a 1,200 pound soft-sided camper with some nice options, such as a sink and a stovetop, a water heater, a furnace, a fantastic fan that I really want, and definitely a toilet. So this is all what we'd call dry weight, 1,200 pounds. Now let's look at the wet weight of this soft-sided dry camper. Let's say it has a 15-gallon fresh water tank and the 6-gallon water heater for hot showers and washing dishes. So we'll do the math with that, and we'll say that we're going to add in a 20-gallon propane tank and fill that up, 1 AGM battery, manual tie downs and jacks because they would save a little bit of weight taking the truck on and the camper on and off the truck, and 1 person and all their stuff, which is kind of universally accepted to be a 500 pound for sort of a measurement of that. So the total weight with just 1 passenger is 2,005 pounds. And that's kind of the best case scenario because, again, you're probably going to be traveling with a companion. But let's go for what we can C is kind of the lightest amount of weight we could put on this half-ton. So the Chevy half-ton payload, again, 1,750. That's about 250 pounds overweight without a travel companion or my fat cat who's laying right beside me, but you can't see them on camera. So this might be great for, you know, a weekend travel or some short trips. Maybe you could add some airbags to the rear suspension or even a rear stabilizer bar, and this could work, like especially if you weren't towing anything. But just one more person with all their stuff is averaged at 500 pounds. So now I'm about 750 pounds over my payload rating. I'd have to consider upgrading my tires at this time because the average half-ton pickup out there comes with like a P275 65R 18 tire. I mean, some are 17, some are 20s, but that's a pretty standard tire. And the weight rating max for that tire is 2,500 pounds. I would definitely have to consider a different rated tire, like an E-rated tire, to meet the weight needs in this example. But what if these travel plans are not just short trips? They're traveling cross country or maybe going up to Alaska, off-road boondocking. Are you willing to be in a truck that's loaded that heavy beyond its payload rating and be sure that it's going to stop and go and handle the way you would expect it to? And I think we all know what the insurance company will say if you had any kind of an accident and you were deemed overloaded. So in my case, the answer was safety first. Number 3 is how to properly balance your truck weight ratings with the type of camper that you want. Based on the math, which again, I do not like to do, I had decided to upgrade my half-ton pickup to a 3/4 ton. And in order to do that, I wanted to verify as much information as I could before the purchase about 3/4 ton pickups. And you know what I wanted to verify. It was the GVWR, the GAWR, the payload, the tow rating, the tire rating information. I wanted all this in advance to consider before I was going to put the camper on it. And for me, this was an easy process because I had the Chevy truck. I love the Chevy truck. I went back to the Chevy dealer and I picked out something I like. I went home and did all my calculations. And by the time I got back there, of course, the Chevys that I wanted were gone. So they brought me down from somewhere in northern New England, a GMC that had all the options that I wanted. And it was a perfect color because it matched my old Chevy. So I decided to buy the GMC 3/4 ton. And naturally, they made me pay like a couple thousand more because it had the GMC label on it. And I pretty much think that that's a Chevy. So we can debate all that part later. But more importantly, I wanted a lot of options in this pickup truck because having driven cross country, and I learned that the creature comforts really mattered. And up until this point, I really had pickup trucks with roll-up windows, which were almost hard to get. But I liked the roll-up windows. I didn't like the power, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of a frugal person when it came to my vehicles. But not on this one. I wanted all the options. I got heated leather seats. I got power everything. Listen to this one, air-conditioned seats. The camper mirrors that would make it real easy to see with the big load on top. And it even had an option when I'm backing up or when I'm too close to any object, the seat actually vibrates. It's pretty unreal. And this is definitely not my dad's, bench seat, 3-on-the-tree Chevy that I learned to drive on. This particular GMC pickup truck was a 2015 SLT 4x4 double cab with a 6.5-foot bed. It was a 6.0-liter 8-cylinder gas engine. It had the plow package and a 373 rear gear ratio. Now, to the specific specs of this pickup truck. My payload was 3,150 pounds, and unfortunately that was kind of the best guess because that was not specifically stated anywhere. There were a lot of resources online that I think helped me to narrow down that was a pretty good ballpark of what my payload rating was. My best estimate of my needed payload was higher than that, 3,345 pounds. That's 195 pounds over, but we'll come back to that. The gross vehicle weight rating for this GMC was 9,500 pounds. Door sticker, that was black and white. Gross axle weight rating for the front was 5,200 and for the rear was 6,200. My dream truck camper had hard sides, a bath and a shower, AC, a furnace, a water heater, pretty good storage, propane furnace, stove, a skylight over the bed so I could look up and see the stars at night, one of those fantastic fans, a wooden frame, and also the winter insulation package. And I wanted to have a truck camper that had a pretty good reputation for quality. And let's face it, if we want to have a big debate about the brands of truck campers, that could be like 7 other videos. There was the Lance and the Northern Light and the North Star and the Arctic Fox and the Adventurer. I had a lot of choices to make. So what I decided to do was go to the Truck Camper Warehouse up in New Hampshire, where I could walk through a whole bunch of different manufacturer models. And for me, one model really stood out. It was a 2015 custom version of a camper made by North Star, and they called it the Liberty. It was kind of a scaled down version from one of their bigger campers known as the Laredo. And what was great about it is the dry weight was 1,750 pounds. And I also learned that North Star weighed all their campers when they left the factory. So I knew that number, as I was looking at it, was highly accurate. Now again, I was going to add on some options, so there was going to be more to put in. The sticker price was $21,500, and that seemed kind of reasonable for me in good old tax-free New Hampshire. It was love at first sight. I could see that it had, the rear end came right to the bumper so that I could tow like a boat or a trailer without needing a hitch extension. And really overall, for a hard-sided camper, it had pretty small dimensions overall. It was kind of stealthy, and I'm not sure if they even make one out there that's any lighter that's a cab over model. Alrighty, so let's do some math again, and I think you already know how I feel about math. The Liberty camper dry weight, 1,750 pounds. I already knew that the options that I wanted to add to this camper included an 8-foot side awning, definitely an air conditioner. I wanted a TV that was LED with a DVD player in it. I wanted the electric Happy Jacks and the torque lift tie down system and 2 AGM batteries. So those extra options that were going to be installed in my camper were 400 pounds. Now I wanted to prep the camper for a trip, and that's called wet weight. So I was going to fill up the LP tank. I had a 20-gallon fresh water tank I was going to fill. 6 gallons of the hot water tank was going to be full. 2 passengers and all their stuff, which we already know what that weighs, and maybe 1 fat cat. And that total weight is 1,245 pounds. The wet camper with all the options and fully loaded for extended travel. The North Star Liberty, 1,750 pounds. All the options I wanted, 400 pounds. Wet weight with the tanks and batteries, 245 pounds. 2 passengers with all their stuff, 1,000 pounds. So the total payload that I was going to put into this GMC was going to be 3,395 pounds. Minus the tailgate, I'm averaging 50 pounds because I lifted it, and I'm going to guess at 50 pounds. So that makes the payload, as a pretty good guess, I'm going to put into this GMC at 3,345 pounds. Number 4. Other things that might affect the weight in both your camper and your pickup truck. Less features in your truck can equal a larger payload. Examples would be like a standard cab instead of a double cab, no power options, engine composition. A diesel engine weighs twice as much as a V8 gas engine. That would be like 600 pounds versus 1,200 pounds. Adding four-wheel drive to a vehicle adds 400 pounds and therefore reduces the payload. Removing the tailgate and back seat, you could maybe save a couple of 100 pounds there. The old school basic optioned pickup trucks are likely to have a greater payload for you. And if budget is your number one item in potentially making this transition to a truck camper, then this is all good news for you. You could also make some modifications to a half-ton pickup, which might include adding airbags to the rear suspension or increase to heavy-duty shocks, or maybe even add a sway bar in the rear, and you could carry a well-loaded soft-sided camper on a half-ton. Some say you could even take this North Star Liberty and put it on a half-ton if you did the airbags, the rear stabilizer bar, and upgrade it to E-rated tires, and in my opinion also packed, kind of light. Again, some of this will be people's opinions, not necessarily facts. And I think that the numbers can work if you think about ways you can reduce the weight of the truck and therefore achieve greater payload numbers. But for my case and with my needs for longer term travel, I really just couldn't make these numbers work. Okay, to the campers. What are things that might affect the weight of a camper? Well, an aluminum framed camper is lighter than a wood framed camper. A slide out on a truck camper weighs about 400 pounds of weight to the camper. You could have one battery instead of 2 or 3 or 4, one propane tank, manual jacks instead of the electric power jacks, no air conditioner. All of these items could be considered to reduce the weight when looking for a new or used truck camper. Buy a used camper and maybe pull out the oven or take out some of the cabinets or even remove the whole bathroom if that's not necessary and lower the weight. There's no rule that says you can't take stuff out of a camper because you like the hard sides and the general look of it. Less amenities mean better payload options for you. Number 5. Now let's go to the CAT scales and see how my math worked out. This was a really exciting day. And by my estimation, I was probably a couple of 100 pounds over my payload rating to the best of my knowledge I was able to figure out. I knew I had a lot of stuff jammed into this truck and camper for a long, extended cross-country trip, probably 2 to 3 months. And I was thinking to myself when I pulled into the truck stop that, what if I'm way over? It was kind of a dreadful moment. I thought about maybe putting the heavy cat outside or dumping some of the things, but that was just a little bit of panic that set in. Now, to review, all those stickers that I mentioned give you some of the story of the details you're going to need with the specs of a pickup truck. And the fact is that truck manufacturers don't really deal with truck campers in any comprehensive way, which is kind of unfortunate because pickup truck drivers would be likely to put on a truck camper. But they don't tell you all the variables and all the information in one clear and coherent way. In my GMC manual, I found one particular statement that was very clear regarding at least payload, and it simply said, do not exceed your truck's stated gross axle weight rating when loading this truck. And I thought, okay, however that ties in, but it was good information. So back to the scales. I pulled up, I paid the guy my $10.50. Here's the CAT scale results. The front axle weighed 4,460 pounds. The rear axle weighed 5,640 pounds, and the gross vehicle weight rating was 10,100 pounds. My truck weighed 6,637 pounds with an official payload of 3,463 pounds. My previous math had calculated my payload at 3,345 pounds. I was only under by 118 pounds in my estimation, which I think was not bad considering I was kind of guesstimating with about a 5-ton load. So my rig was 300 pounds above the payload rating, found in, wherever I could find it. It was mostly the internet. There was some information inside the truck, but it turned out it wasn't very accurate with the options I had on the truck. So based on the information I could find, I did designate my payload as 3,150, and I was under with the payload that it weighed in at 3,345 pounds. However, more importantly, I was underweight, maybe significantly underweight, in GMC's stated most important category, which was the gross axle weight ratings. I was under by 740 pounds in the front, 560 pounds in the rear, and in my case, the GMC options that most affected this payload rating or perhaps increase in being able to carry more than I expected to be able to carry was the plow package option that was on the front and the larger rear gear ratio that was 373. I hope that you find some of this information helpful if you're considering purchasing a slide-in truck camper. I appreciate any comments that you may have that could be differing from the version I presented or any feedback that you want to give. If you liked this video, how about a thumbs up? And if you don't like this video, I'll take the thumbs down. I appreciate all of my subscribers out there. Thank you for watching and happy camping.